to maximizing your Revit projects with Ideate software. Again, my name is Richard Taylor. During the course of the presentation, since we have a number of people that are on the call, we put you all into a listen-only mode, but feel free to type any questions along the way, and we'll be reviewing those at several points in the presentation, and I'll try to answer those as best I can. So we're here to give you a brief overview of our 4 Ideate software solutions: Ideate BIM Link, Ideate Explorer, Ideate Sticky, and Ideate Apps. And again, oops, oh, too fast there. My name is Richard Taylor. My background is in architecture, but hopefully I'll show you some MEP examples today as well. I was, let's say, fortunate enough to be one of the original employees at Revit Technology back actually before the first Revit was released in 2000. Then as part of the Autodesk acquisition in 2002, I started with Autodesk, worked there for a number of years. And then I've also worked in both large and small architecture firms at various times along the way, and various software development companies. I can always be reached for additional questions at richard.taylor@ideateinc.com, or you can follow me on Twitter at rwtaylor_Revit. So Ideate Software, just quickly, is a global software company. We are primarily based in San Francisco, but we sell our software all around the world, and actually over 40 countries and growing. This is just a preview of some of the places for our architectural customers around the world. So I'll just kind of highlight that very quickly. Engineering customers, also globally. And then our construction and facilities management customers, just again, a small sampling. So in this presentation today, we are partnering with CADsoft, as you know. So CADsoft is our partner in Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. So any particular technical questions or even pricing questions, you can certainly contact CADsoft Consulting, and they'll be able to help you out there. So with that, I'd like to get into the agenda. As I mentioned, our 4 Ideate software applications, I'd like to give you kind of a brief overview today of Ideate Explorer, Ideate BIM Link, Ideate Sticky, and Ideate Apps. It's our newest software solution from Ideate Software that we just released about a month ago. So the first solution that I'm going to talk about today is called Ideate Explorer. And Ideate Explorer is a model browser. It's showing you all of the instances or elements in your Revit project, which is very different than the project browser. The project browser in Revit out of the box shows you some families that have been loaded into the project or template, but it's not giving you a comprehensive list of all of the instances and pieces of information in your project. And so with Ideate Explorer, you can get a comprehensive list, and then you can quickly understand how those items are being used in your project, and then you can, for instance, maybe you need to modify them in some way or reclassify them in some way. So that Ideate Explorer gives you that ability to easily understand all the relationships of those elements. So what I'm going to do is switch over here to Revit. So what you're looking at is Revit 2017. Now we support multiple versions of Revit, going actually all the way back to Revit 2012. Most of our customers are on the last 3 releases of Revit, 2015, Revit 2016, and 2017. Everything I show you today is going to be identical on those 3 releases of Revit. And as I said, we do support multiple versions of our software. So with Revit 2017, you're going to see that the Ideate software is accessed through the Ideate software tab within Revit. If you're using Revit 2015 or 2016, it's going to be accessed through the add-ins tab instead. So for us, if I select on one of the ribbons, like the architectural, structural, or systems ribbon, then I can select on Ideate software, and I have access to my applications. I can right-click and add to the quick access toolbar, which I've done for all of the Ideate software applications. So as I said, the first solution we're going to talk about today is Ideate Explorer. When I first bring up this dialog, it shows me a list of all the elements in the active view. But I may want to switch this to be the entire project. So you notice that the first thing as under all these categories, it's giving me a list of the actual instances or the items that I have. So in this conference center, I've got 35,978 elements. And I have, 173 CAD imports, 3 ceiling panels, 3 detail items, 1,321 dimensions. So I can quickly see and get a count of all of the instances. If I go down here to the curtain wall panels as an example, expand on that to operable panels, notice that I've got clear glazing, I've got frit pattern glazing. I can expand on clear glazing and actually expand to the individual instances of this project. So if I double click on one of these, Revit's going to open up the view, and then I can do a single check mark here to the left, which automatically puts that into the selection set. So I can select multiple items as an example. So you see there I've got 4 selected. Down in my Revit filter or selection, I've also got 4. I can select on the node above, which is the clear glazing operable awning panel. And then I can say, well, you know what? I would like to switch this to a different type. Maybe I want that to be a sliding panel instead. So now we're going to switch all 44 of those to sliding panels, and then they get reorganized or categorized correctly. So it's very easy to be able to quickly find something, select on it, and then change maybe its family or type or its status. So another example of that is, let's say I want to organize the project not by the category, but I'd like to organize it by the level. And so I've got the level unassigned, which are a lot of elements within Revit, but I've also got the top of footing, first floor, and so forth. So if I go over here to the top of footing, I see that I've got a door on the top of footing, which seems to be incorrect for me. So again, I can open that up. I can quickly highlight on the door, and maybe I want to use a command or a feature in Revit that allows me to build a selection box around that door. I can view that in 3D and say, well, obviously that door was placed incorrectly on the wrong level because it's extending down beyond the wall. So in this case now I go over to the properties palette and I'm going to change it from the top of footing to the first floor and apply that. Then once I've created that or made that change, now I can come back here to the view and say, well, you know what? In the view itself, I don't want to turn on the section box. I want to have all of the elements. And again, now I can say fit that view and see all the elements in that view. So not only can I organize or sort the elements in the Revit model by category, but I can also sort by level or phase or work set. So that's really handy to kind of give a quick explanation of how these elements are being used within the project. Now you'll see underneath the sort by, there's also a filter. I can filter by, for instance, model elements within the project. I can filter by annotation elements, and these are all built-in filters. Or I can switch to Ideate Audit. Ideate Audit is a filter that basically highlights certain categories that we feel you should be taking a specific look at on a daily basis to make sure that your model is healthy and running well. So for instance, like lines, we have 17,592 lines in this project. I can expand on the detail lines, and you see there that I have some that seem like they're matching my standard and some that don't. So for instance, this line 47, what exactly is that? I can open that up and actually highlight on that, and basically this has been exploded from an AutoCAD import. So if I want to clean this up, I'm going to go and select on all 66 instances of that line 47. I'm going to select on line 48, 49, 51, the 7-8-09, line 0. And so what I've done is I've selected 487 lines. Now I'm going to come over here to Revit and say I would like all of those 487 lines to be reclassified on the A detail fine layer or line style. And so Ideate Explorer allows you to quickly reclassify all of those and change those so now they're on a different line style. So now you see that they're on the A detail fine, and we've added it to our total count of 1,173. So now we can easily see which lines are adhering to our styles. And for those of you that are very familiar with Revit, you know that you just can't pick on a line and say select all instances of this type and then be able to move or manipulate the information. So something like Ideate Explorer is extremely helpful, allowing you to reclassify these. Another example, I still have the Ideate Audit filter. I might want to look at text notes. And if I come down here to my text notes, I see that I have some duplicated text notes. So I've got 3/16 Aerial 2 and Aerial 3. I might want to double click on this to go to that view where it's actually that access to view is being highlighted. And say, you know what, I want to select on all of those 3/16 Aerial 3 and 3/16 Aerial 2, and I want to move those over now to 3/16 Aerial. So again, I can consolidate the styles that I'm using in Revit. One last thing I would like to do is come over here to Manage, and we're going to select on Purge Unused in Revit, because now there are no longer any active instances of the elements, but those styles still are in our project. So if I come down here to Text and expand on it, I see the 3/16 Aerial 2 and 3, and I want to purge those out of my project. So by doing this, again, on a daily basis, you're going to make sure that you don't have text styles or line styles that you're not using and that are clogging up your project. Okay, so now we've been able to find our lines, we've been able to find text. What about CAD imports? That's another item that's showing up here in the Ideate Audit. So if you come over here to the project browser just for a moment, and I collapse all the views, you'll notice that the project browser shows me CAD links, or sorry, Revit links, but it doesn't show me CAD links. So now I have the ability to look at CAD imports or CAD links within the Ideate Explorer window. So by expanding on that, I can now quickly see that, oh, I've got a couple door instances here. I can go to the door detail by double clicking. But what happens if it's been hidden in a particular view? So right now, Explorer is telling me this element has been hidden. I can turn on Revit's Reveal Hidden Element mode and see that, oh, okay, that CAD file is in this site plan view. That should never have been. So now I can identify on the CAD file and select Ideate Delete in the Ideate Explorer window, and it says, oh, do you really want to delete that CAD file? Yes, I do. So I can confirm that and now turn off my Reveal Hidden Elements, and I know that I have a nice, clean site plan view that doesn't have any other hidden CAD files associated to it. So again, it's a great way for me to understand how these items are being used within the overall project. Now, not only can I search for things, as you saw, CAD files, or searching for text or lines or dimensions, but I can search on the values behind those items. So if I switch this over here to have no filter, I'm going to display or select on my, let's say, dimensions. So Ideate Explorer is showing me that I have 1,321 dimensions. Now I'm going to use Query to come over here and say, okay, of those dimensions, I'd like to look at the suffix. And it's going to show me all the dimensions, and I see that maybe I have 2 of them where the word or the characters typical have been added. I'd like to select and find those. So Ideate Explorer finds those for me, and I can zoom right to those items. So there's the 2 right there that actually are on the same dimension itself. And then I can decide to make some change if I want to. Or another example is, let's say I want to look at not the current selection again, but the entire project. I'd like to look at all dimensions down here. So I'll select on dimensions again, and again do Query. And I'd like to find out all dimensions that have been overridden in the project. So that's a value override. And so I see that there are many that are blank, but there's actually this one that has been overridden. And so I can tell Explorer to go ahead and display it for me. And then I can click on that. And sure enough, that particular dimension has been overridden and replaced with this text 48-inch max. So I want to use the actual value. What's interesting is this one actually is just text. It's not even a dimension. So that's why I have the 2 different items here. So maybe I wanted to get rid of that if I don't want that overridden or that particular text to be shown in my project. So to be able to find an overridden dimension in your entire project is almost impossible without a tool like Ideate Explore. Another great example of this using Explore and Query is to look at the entire project. I'm going to look at and select casework and furniture items. So we'll select furniture here. Now I'm going to go to the query, and I'm going to find all of those pieces of furniture that are in place. So what I'm going to do here is type in the word place. Is in place is a value. And so it finds that there are 499 that are loadable families, and there are 28 that actually are in place families. So then it builds the list, and I can again open up a view that shows those particular families. And you may say to yourself, well, why is that important? Well, it's because in-place families, they can be used judiciously. It's great within a Revit project, but if they're used too much, they can slow the performance of the Revit model, because as you copy these around, it's copying the entire the family. So they're pretty heavy, and they can negatively impact the performance of your Revit project. So you want to make sure that they're being used in the correct way. For instance, this is probably a bad example, using an in-place family to create bookshelves. A loadable family would have been a much better option. All right, so you also see that as I'm switching here to the entire project, I've been using this Explore tab, but I haven't really touched this Navigate. Well, what's this Navigate all about? Well, again, back over here to the left in the project browser, if I look at schedules, I'm just looking at all my schedules in one big list alphabetically. But with Navigate, I'm able to quickly navigate to legends, schedules, sheets, and views. If I look at schedules, we're classifying them by different types of schedules: material takeoffs, note blocks, schedules and quantities. And again, if I expand on schedules and quantities, I go down to rooms, I can quickly navigate to the room schedule and open that up. Much easier than, and I could find it much easier than I could within the project browser. Also, with views, I can navigate to different views very easily and quickly. So for instance, I might want to go to views that are on a sheet or not on a sheet. If they are on a sheet, I can navigate, for instance, to my floor plan, my enlarged toilet plan, and I can also navigate and open the sheet. So just like the project browser, but I can navigate to these views, but I can find them much easier and faster, and I can also navigate directly to the sheet. So by having this Navigate tab, it allows me to sort of explore the elements on one side and then navigate to the individual views with the other tab. And then as you saw, for instance, with views that are not on a sheet, I may be able to go to these 3D views. They haven't been placed on a sheet as an example. Maybe these sections as an example, I want to select on all of them, and now I want to delete them. And so I can get rid of them at this point or purge them out of my project by deleting those 5 views. So again, it's a really nice way for me to understand how these are being used in the project. So that's a quick overview of Ideate Explorer. I'm going to go back here to my PowerPoint presentation. And just a couple of summary items is that, why did we introduce that Navigate tab? Well, again, you can go quickly and find items that just don't appear very easily or are hard to find within the project browser. You can find unused sheets and views, you can find legends and schedule, and you can customize your working environment. And then with the Ideate query, you can find hidden elements, you can find unused annotation, select by structural usage. You saw that I was able to review in-place usage as well in the family. You can also review revisions. So any details or data that was in the Revit model, you can basically search on. Okay, the next solution that I'm going to talk about today is called Ideate BIMlink. Ideate BIMlink is all about taking the data from Revit, all that I in the building information model, and sending it to Excel for manipulation, for reporting, maybe even to make some changes in Excel, and then being able to import that data or those changes back into the Revit model. So I'm going to switch back over to my Revit project. I still have Ideate Explorer open. I can close that. I can actually just be in this view because BIMlink looks at the entire project. So if I start up BIMlink, notice that I already have some what we call link definitions that are showing up in my project. So these are sort of, think of them like a schedule template. So in fact, I can load samples, and we ship with about 200 to 300 different samples for link definitions. So for instance, if I wanted like project standards, I could come over here and say, what are my view types being used in my project? And it's going to give me a list of, for instance, the family name. So I've got different view types like 3D view, ceiling plan, details, building elevations, and I can scroll through here, building sections, sheets, and so forth. So I can use the link or the automatically sort of predefined links, or I can use the information within the schedule itself. So you saw earlier that I was able to quickly navigate to that room schedule. In this case, the room schedule has area, room type, base finish, and some ceiling finishes here. So that's the parameters that are in this schedule. So again, if I call up BIM link, I may want to go and say, let's close that schedule. I may want to go directly from that information. So from the schedule, let's choose the room schedule itself. And here you see what it's done is it's given me the room number, the room name, the area, and some finishes. Now maybe I don't care about those finishes, so I'm going to remove them. And maybe I want to add department and comments as an example. So I add those items. And then maybe I also want to add information from the level, like the level elevation or the, let's say, the level name. So just like a schedule where you're adding and subtracting the parameters or the properties that you'd like to review, the Ideate BIM link works the same way. So now we're given these items. And again, you can choose the, like if I want to take these comments and move them down, for instance, I could do that and move them off to the side here. So now that I have what I want to export, I would say done and export and then give it a name. So we'll call it room schedule 1. And so then I can open up the file, and this is the way that sort of the raw data in Excel. So I'm looking at the room number, the room names, the square footage by area. I've got this room type, which is being built by a drop-down list. So the room type itself, in Revit, I had classroom, common, hallway, office, and utility. So now I can choose from those as a set list because we can generate these drop-down lists. I'm going to select on the first two room numbers, room 101 and 102. I'm going to grab that, pull that all the way down, and renumber this sequence very easily within Excel. And then maybe I want to go off to the right here and do a little formula. So I'm going to say the formula is lower. So we're going to change the uppercase to lowercase on C2. So what it did is it took that catering kitchen as the name, and it was all uppercase. It changed it to lowercase. So I can grab on that little corner green square there and pull that down and then say I want all of that formula now to be with that particular column. And I'll copy that information and I'll paste the information back into column C. So now what I've done is I've used a little Excel formula to change all the case from uppercase to lowercase. And then I can also use tools like cut and paste. So for occupancy, if I said Control C, I wanted to like Control V, I can do that very easily in Excel, and I can't do that in the Revit schedule very easily. Now let's come over down to my last one here. I don't want to input that. Let's say I want to create a new room. And this new room is going to be, let's say, Arizona conference space. And the new room is going to have a value of 150. And it's going to be a classroom. So I'll copy that. And I'll also copy this, the occupancy. And so the key there is to type the word new in the first column because it doesn't have a Revit ID. we want Ideate BIM link to actually create that element. Then the last thing is under multi-purpose space, I want to change this. So I said that that was the Arizona conference room. I'll say the New Mexico conference room. So I made a change. So what I've done there, just in summary, is I've changed some items. I changed the room numbers. I changed the value for some of the room names, but I also changed them from uppercase to lowercase. And then I filled in some occupancy and some room types. One last thing I'm going to do is come over here and change the area here to 5,000 square feet. Now you're going to see that this gray means that it's a Revit read-only property, and I'm not going to be able to change it. But I want to show you what the kind of message I get within Ideate BIM link. So I save all these changes, come back here to Revit, and now I'm going to import, and that was my room schedule 1. So when I import that data, here's all the information. Everything in yellow up above, Ideate BIM link tells me that's going to change. Down below, it's giving me a status and warning or helpful messages. So in the case of I tried to change the area to 5,000 square feet, and BIM link says, you can't do that. It's a Revit read-only property. And notice it created a new unplaced room. It changed the name from catering kitchen or the uppercase to lowercase. And if I scroll all the way down here, you'll see that it also changed, it was called multi-purpose space. It changed it to the New Mexico conference room. If I import that, now I've actually changed that data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my other tool, Explorer, to quickly get to and navigate to that floor plan. So that view, we'll say it's my first floor equipment and furniture plan. So now that I have that available and I zoom up on it, notice that the tag has automatically been updated to New Mexico conference room because that was the data that we changed. If I tap to the room itself, maybe I want to delete the room, and now we'll go over here and we'll place a room, but we're not going to place a new room by the command just a new room information within Revit. We're going to come over here to our placeholder rooms, and we're going to place the Arizona conference space. So when I select on that, notice that it automatically has the room name, it has the information about that room. So when I come over here and tab on it, it's room number 150. It has the room type of classroom, the department of occupancy. So all of that information could be filled out within Excel first, someone that doesn't even know Revit as an example, and then imported into Revit to update the BIM model or the Revit project. So again, the summary is Ideate BIM link is all about taking the information from Revit, sending it to Excel, maybe as a report, or maybe for editing, and then to import that data back into Revit. So when we look at Ideate BIM link, not only can we edit parameters or properties of schedules, but we can also rename families and types, and we can manage parameters that don't appear in a regular Revit schedule. We can create items. My example I showed you was rooms, but we can also create areas, schedule keys, masses, generic models, rooms, sheets, and spaces. And then we also give you access to all of the data, linked file support, just like a Revit schedule. If I go back here to BIM link and I select on any one of these, like furniture, and I'll say properties, notice there's a little check mark here that says include elements and linked files. So I can include the elements for reporting purposes, but I'm not able to update or change those elements in the linked model itself, just like you can't do that within Revit. So we support both 2D and 3D categories, all the design option data, and all the phase data as well. So Ideate BIM link, again, allows you a very flexible workflow of setting up your link definition, exporting, making changes, and then importing that data back. Now, there are times where you don't necessarily want the Excel spreadsheet to drive the Revit model. You just need to be able to display maybe code information, design options, or design detail, or maybe general notes. You have this in an Excel file and you just want to display it within Revit. Well, that's what our next solution is for. It's called Ideate Sticky. Oops, I skipped one here, but if it's Ideate Sticky is handling that non-BIM data we're saying. So it's information that may need to be included in the Revit project, but it's not driving the Revit model itself. So in that, if I switch back over to Revit, what I'm going to do here is select and create a new view. And we'll say that we're going to create a new sheet view here. And so like I said, maybe I wanted to include a schedule from Excel. So I come over here to Sticky. I would say create, and then navigate out to the Excel file itself. I've got a lighting specification here. I'm going to select on that lighting specification, and then I'm going to select on one of these tabs. If the Excel file has multiple tabs or multiple worksheets, you can choose which worksheet you want to import. So in this case, I'm going to select Lumec, and I'm going to say OK. And so now you notice that that schedule has appeared, and with all the images and the details of it. If I want to have a different sticky schedule as an example, I might want to come over here and say create. I'm going to go to my multi-page revisions. And this is an example of a matrix style schedule that could not be normally created with a Revit schedule. So for instance, you wanted to show the sheets along the left-hand side and the revisions along the top. So like what happens if we want to make a change to one of these things or one of the items in Excel? So in order to do that, I'm going to come over here to my directory. I've been using that lighting spec, so I'm going to call that lighting spec up. And we went to Lumec, right? So what I'm going to do is we'll select Philips Lumec. Okay, for fun, I used New Mexico, Arizona, we'll do Texas. And so I want to select that, let's say this area here is going to be red, and maybe I don't care about that last urban bollard because we're in Texas, right? Although there's a second one there. But so I'm going to highlight from column A, coming down here just to my post top. And I'm going to give it a name, and we'll call it, I don't know, Texas region. So basically what that does is it says, okay, even though you're using the Philips Lumec tab in Excel, I want a smaller area defined. So now I save that, come back over here to Revit. Well, you'll notice that the changes didn't automatically update because what we're doing is we're basically updating those changes when you open up the Revit project. However, I can go over here to Sticky, and you'll see immediately it says that that file is out of date. So what I can do is turn this auto update on. I'm going to move this off to the side here. I'll click on auto update, and immediately notice it went out and it says, oh, Philips, Texas, it made it red. Then I want to change the region, so I'll say update from there. I'm going to make it the Texas region. And there, it dropped off that last one, the last image there. So now it's just having these three images. So you can choose exactly the area that you're looking at as well as the individual tab. Now in this case with this type of matrix style schedule, or maybe a schedule that you've got line types that were generated from Excel, what I can do is come over here to Sticky and go to my settings, and I can say, you know what, I'd like to do that medium line, and I want that to be mapped to a particular Revit line style, like this R line style instead. I'm going to update all the stickies, and now look at that particular line style. So if we come over here to our line styles in Revit, we'll come down here to the R line style that I said. We'll make it maybe 5, and we'll make it orange. And so now when I zoom up on that, hopefully you can see that that's a little thicker line and that it's an orange line style instead of the black. So you can really get a nice look and feel to these schedules. And in fact, these are Revit schedules. If you double click you're actually in that schedule view. However, if I go and make a change, in this case safety and abbreviations, notice that it's going to tell me that it's been automatically updated from Excel. And so that this sticky is sort of linked to that Excel file. And that if I do make changes, it's fine, but the next time I update the information, I'm going to lose my edits or changes. So I probably don't want to do that. I typically tell people that what you should do is always make the changes in Excel and then just have Ideate Sticky update and basically track the changes and the information from the Excel file. So that's Ideate Sticky. I'm going to go back to my presentation here. And again, managing the BIM data or the non-BIM data, allowing you to publish an Excel worksheet in your Revit project. And in fact, you may have general notes that are linked into 5 or 10 different Revit projects. If you update the general notes in one location, then that's updated everywhere on all 5 or 10 of those projects. All right, our last solution that I'm going to talk about today is called Ideate Apps. And Ideate Apps is a little bit different than the previous solutions in that it's actually a collection of 4 tools. So Ideate Explorer, as you saw, was its own application. So is Ideate Sticky and Ideate BIMlink, each one addressing a particular Revit workflow. But Ideate Apps is more of a productivity tool set, again, that contains 4 tools that allow you to streamline your Revit tasks. So those tools that I'm going to talk about are Ideate Smart Delete, Ideate X-Ray, Ideate Quick Select, and Ideate Renumber. The first one is Ideate Smart Delete. So how many of you have accidentally deleted something that you didn't realize that you deleted it because it was tied to another object? Someone may say, well, I didn't delete those door tags. You know, but oh, yeah, I did delete the door itself, so the tag went away. Or maybe you have a keynote that might get associated with a floor. The floor gets deleted, and of course then those keynotes get deleted as well. So there are lots of relationships in Revit, and you're never quite sure of the, what you're actually deleting or removing. So I'm going to show you an example of a delete with Revit, and also one with our Smart Delete application. So now back in Revit, I'm going to open up a file here. I won't save this project. And we'll say this one right here. And once this opens up, I'm going to go to a specific view where there's a level. And then that level, I'm going to use a couple different ways to delete that. So if I show the level of this project, right? And now I'm going to select on the level itself, and I'm just going to go over here to delete in Revit. Revit tells me one other thing that might get deleted. The scope crop grids will also be deleted. I'm like, okay, that's great. Only one thing got removed. Well, but in fact, there was much more. If I select on the level itself, now you go to the Smart Delete tool, under Ideate Software, Ideate Apps, little trash can here, Smart Delete. It tells me now not only what Revit told you was this scope crop grid will be deleted, but also mechanical equipment, rectangular ducts, some text, a viewport, and each one of these, if I want to find out, for instance, this rectangular duct, this mitered elbow, I can double click and open up the view and go right there and see that. Or I can go maybe open up the tag instance that will also be deleted. So Smart Delete is giving you a full comprehensive list of all the information that will be deleted in addition to the element you selected. Another way to use Smart Delete is if I go back to that plan view, maybe I want to grab a whole bunch of things by box selecting. Now call up the Smart Delete tool, and what it's going to do is scan through items and will open up to the first item that has a dependent. In this case, lighting fixtures and spaces. With spaces, each one of these spaces has a tag that appears in a different view. And I could open up those different views and review that. So there's the first one view, here's another one. So you can see as I'm going through, these are all the different views that contain that space tag. If I don't want to delete the tags as well, I can uncheck spaces, I can uncheck lighting fixtures, and then refresh my tree list. And now it tells me, hey, good news. There are no other dependents that will also get deleted if you delete these objects. So in this case, if you delete all 137, then you know that there's nothing else that's going to be deleted. You can also use Ideate Smart Delete to filter items. Even though I selected all those by a box select, maybe I didn't want cable trays, grids, HVAC zones, and some of this other information. I only cared about the cable tray fittings. So now I can say, well, you know what? I've got these 6 cable tray fittings. I can now go delete those. So I'm just deleting those items, not everything else in my project or in my list. So that's the Ideate Smart Delete. Again, giving you tools to understand what will also be deleted when you select an element. So both the element and its dependents. The next tool or collection that we have is called Ideate Apps X-Ray. And X-Ray is allowing you to find elements that may be hidden in a particular view, or why aren't they being displayed, I should say. So have you ever had the issue where you're trying to place an object in a view and it says none of the elements are visible in this view as you place it? You know, what could be the cause of that? So there's actually over 50 different ways to hide an element within Revit. It might be annotation crop. It might be a scope box. It may be discipline. It may be phase. It may be category. There's lots of different issues. We're checking over 50 different tests to see why that element isn't visible. So if I switch back over here to Revit, I'm going to go over here and say, well, you know what? I want to work on sprinklers in this view. And as I look at this, my sprinklers aren't being displayed. And so I think that they should be in this view. So what I can do is start X-ray. I can either pick an object where it's displayed in another view, like if I have sprinklers that are being shown in a different view, I can select them in that view. But in this case, I might just want to select by crossing and say, you know what, I think there should be sprinklers here. So then I can choose on the sprinkler that came up. So it actually selects both visible and non-visible elements within that bounding box, which is the view region, and then a little bit beyond and a little bit above the view crop region. So now I say find element, and so what it does is it goes through those checks and it says, okay, this is because the category was turned off for this particular element. So I can, if I want to find out what this means, I can select on the help. And I can scroll down through the category and I say, oh, okay, this is the category, the View Visibility Graphics dialog box. Well, how would I get to that? Well, you can hit the Show Me, which then actually calls up the View Visibility dialog graphics, and you can then go down here to Sprinklers and see that the category is turned off. Or, in a somewhat simple solution like this, you can actually fix if it's not being driven by a view template, and you can tell, X-Ray can tell Revit to turn on that particular category. So now I have my sprinklers that are displayed in that view. So another example of this might be, let's look at an elevation view where a pump is missing, and I'm not quite sure why. So again, I can fire up X-Ray, and I'm going to search by crossing. I think there should be a pump in this view. So when it selects my list of items, sure enough, I see a mechanical equipment heat pump. Then I say find the element, and again, it's going to search through those elements, and this one is, well, it's because it was by the phase. The view phase is set differently than the object phase. And if I select help, here I can see, you know, the information. Is it the element that's on the wrong phase, or is it the view? So that's why there's not a simple fix, because you may want to change the view, or you may want to change the element. So in this case, I'm going to close this, and I'm going to say, okay, and I'm going to go back to the view and say, you know what, let's change the phase filter there and apply that. And now the pump should be displayed. Oops, the wrong view. So let's come over here to the phase filter, future, and apply. And now the pump appears in this showing. So that was a way for me to understand why that particular heat pump and the phase, as you see, was created in the future phase, demolished in future. So that needed to be set in order for me to see that phase. Now there are other types of items when I want to search for things like elevation markers or section grids that it's not very advantageous to use that selection mode where I'm doing a box select. So if I come over here to the view discipline here example, and I've got a section that should be showing up in this particular view, but I'm not quite sure why it's not showing up. Well, here's another tool that I have in my collection called Ideate Quick Select. Ideate Quick Select allows me to choose either visible or non-visible items. So in this case, I can say the entire project. I can come down here to my view references and say, you know, there's my section. Let's do my building section, section number 3. So now I've selected it here with using Quick Select. Now I want to start X-ray, and now it's automatically in my selection there, as you see, the building section. Now go ahead and find the element. And why wasn't it displaying in this view? It's because the view discipline was set differently than the discipline of the actual section marker. So again, I can select on help to understand the difference between view references or the view, and then to make that selection or change either by changing the view or changing the section itself. Now I can also, again, with the Quick Select, I can search for particular items. So if I come over here and say that I want to search for, let's say, duct fittings, I spell it right. I've got duct accessories, fittings, ducts. And so if I come down here to the duct fittings, rectangular end cap, you know, I can actually go directly to that particular view. And again, even if that view is not open, then Ideate Quick Select is going to open that view for me. So it's also a very nice way to work with any of these items, in the sense of, if I come over here and I'm not quite sure about my ductwork, so I'm going to clear that, and let's say lighting devices. If I select on my lighting devices, lighting fixture tags, and lighting fixtures, I've now selected 1,000 items. I can now go start Smart Delete and say which of those that I just selected of those 1,000 items have dependencies. And it looks like the lighting fixtures were the ones that have the most, obviously. So now I can see that they're lighting fixture circuit type tags. So another way to select items, rather than just a box select or selecting them individually, is to use Quick Select, and then again to use, in combination, X-ray or Smart Delete. So again, Quick Select allows you to quickly find lines, revisions, CAD imports, information that may or may not be visible within your project. And because it's creating a selection set, you can immediately fire up the Smart Delete, or you can fire up the X-ray, or really any other command in Revit that you'd like. My final Ideate Apps tools is called Renumber. It allows me to renumber almost any item in Revit very easily and efficiently. So with Renumber, I'm going to come back over here to my project again, and maybe I have those lighting fixtures. I'm going to zoom up on this, and notice that I have this multi-purpose space. I'm going to click on the tag itself here, or the space, I should say. And let's come down here and just change this to, let's say, 432. And so now I changed the space. I want to update the tags accordingly on the lighting fixtures. It should be the space, and then with an A, B, C, and then a circuit number. So when I fire up the Renumber tool, I now am shown contextually just the tools that make sense for this particular view. In this case, grids, lighting, space name, or space number. So I go to lighting, I just select the elements. I say start numbering. So I'm going to start here with this one. This becomes A, B, this becomes C. Maybe this is D and this is E or something. So now I've, the order that I selected it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is the order it gets renumbered. Or maybe a more efficient way is to select by crossing. So when I say start numbering, it's going to choose, or I can choose, I should say, a detail line that was either drawn previously or I can draw it at the time of the renumbering operation. I'm going to select on this, and notice now it's choosing all of the items that line crosses through. This one right here doesn't have a circuit number, so maybe I want to ignore that element. And then again, the sequence skips. The 3 white ones are white because they were not changed. Because I started with 432, and I'm now renumbering 432. If I reverse them, though, all of them now are going to be changed. And I can say accept the changes. And now this one has, starts with K, and it will count down from the alphabet from then to J and so forth. So this is the new space number with the circuit tag number. You can also very easily renumber, let's say, detail views. So if I wanted to go to viewports, right, I've already drawn this detail line through these views, and I can go again and start Ideate renumber. I can select on to renumber details on a sheet and go select path crossing, start numbering. And again, now it's going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. I can reverse that and accept the changes. So now it starts out with, it just renumbered that 4. And if I zoom over, 3, 2, 1, and so forth. Now, let's go up to an architectural example. I'm going to open up a project. We'll say this is the architectural one. And what if you don't have the path already created like I did there? I already drew those detail lines. Well, in this case, maybe I want to renumber rooms. So I'm going to come up again, select the renumber command. And it's, again, going to give me contextual rules that are only applied to this view. So right now, I can only renumber doors, rooms, and curtain panels. I'm going to select path by crossing, but I'm also going to create new path, which means that I'm going to create that line as I go. So when I say start numbering, it now says, well, which line style do you want to use? By default, you can select on the Ideate path or vertex. So I'm going to select OK. I'm going to start in vestibule 100. I'm going to go over to the theme classroom number 102. I'm going to jump over to the corridor, maybe this lobby, then over to the multi-purpose space, and then, I don't know, the catering kitchen. So now I've selected the path, basically. Now I hit escape, and it says, okay, it went through of those items. Let's say, oh, I'm doing the doors. That's not what I wanted to do. Rooms. Start numbering. Then I get all those rooms, right? And again, you saw that I started with the 1,000 value. If I say cancel, I can say, oh, you know what? I wanted that to be 6, and the increment was going to be, say 0, 0. So it starts at 600 or something. Start numbering. So now it's going to renumber those rooms with the 600 value. And again, I can reverse them or not, or I can decide that I want to take the multi-purpose space and ignore that particular element. But again, what I've done is I've changed, or I've got 9 values because that line was going through 9 different spaces. So if I cancel this out for a moment, you notice that it was going from the vestibule 100, but it crossed through the corridor into the theme classroom. It crossed through this other theme classroom 103 into the other corridor, and so forth. But what if I wanted to have this be where it was just the vertex? So I'm going to call up the Ideate renumber again, and I'm going to select vertex, start numbering, select on the line, and then I get a much smaller list. I only have 6 because it was basically where I clicked the vestibule 100, then the theme classroom, then this corridor over here, and then the lobby, and so forth. So in fact, if I want to cancel that, I want to go back to where I was changing it to 6. I'll say start numbering. And there I just want to do those 6 values, let's say. And I accept the changes. And now you see that in this case, Corridor 101 did not change, but the Theme Classroom 601 did change because that's where I actually clicked. So there's 2 different ways you can do it. You can do path by crossing or path by vertex. Then the last thing we can do there is if I go to renumber, you'll notice that when I do that rooms, I have select elements one at a time that you saw me do with the light fixtures. I can select path by crossing or vertex. If I switch the rule to be a door rule, I can actually do an auto number by view because the door rule is only looking at the room, and so it doesn't necessarily need to have a direction, if you will. And in fact, when I manage that rule and look at the doors and edit that, I'm going to take that constant and remove that and just have the room and A, and then say, okay, that's good, and say okay, and now auto number by view. And now it's going to look at all those and say, oh, okay, well, here are all the doors, what they were. Here are the new doors. Maybe in this particular case, this curtain wall, I want to ignore that element. I don't care about it. Maybe in this case of, let's scroll down here to curtain wall single 302A. I want to flip the room. So now it's coming from 601A instead of 302. So I can do that by just flipping the from room and to room values, and again, accept the changes. And there might be some duplicate values, marked values, but that's fine. So now you notice that I've selected the theme classroom. In this case, I said the 302 was from the other item here, or the other corridor, I should say. I guess the outside, because this is 302A, 302B, because I flipped the door because it was coming from the outside. So in this case, I mean, here's 602. Let's go. Here's a good one, 307, a catering kitchen. I guess all of these, they're all flipped to the other direction, so those need to be updated as well. But again, it gives you the ability to quickly renumber any particular item. And again, based on multiple ways, by renumbering by a path, both vertex or by crossing, or in this case, like you saw me do, renumber doors per the room data, or automatically renumber views or sheets by path or a pick method. And then I can really extract coordinates or data, or I should say information from one parameter and then place that into another parameter. And by customizing and saving those rules. And you can transfer those rules from one project to another very easily. So all of our Ideate software solutions that you saw today, Ideate Explorer, Ideate BIMlink, Ideate Sticky, and Ideate Apps, are available as both standalone and network. So a standalone, you would buy a particular Revit version. You would say, oh, I want Ideate Apps for Revit 2015. And then you would have that for use on that one computer and for forever, basically. Or a more flexible option is to have the network license. The network license gives you, obviously, a floating network of, let's say, 5 network solutions for Ideate Explorer. But it also gives you the ability to have mix and match versions. So you could have 5 network versions of Ideate Explorer, but you could use 2 of them on 2014, 3 of them on 2015, and 1 of them on 2017 as an example. So all of our solutions have both in-product as well as online help. So if I, for instance, call up Quick Select as an example. Over to the right here is that I have this little drop-down, and you see I have help. And it starts out with getting started with Ideate Quick Select, and I can scroll through the getting started guide that's included with each one of our applications. I also have additional information, so if I go over here to learn more, I can then click on the online help. And this goes out to our web page where you see that there's help and information on Ideate Quick Select. There's FAQ information. There's also, you can navigate to any one of these. So you can say Ideate Sticky, how would I do something? How would I manage the size of a sticky or break it up on multiple sheets? and where we have that information. In addition, if I go to our solutions, Ideate Apps or Ideate Sticky, each one of these has videos. If I select on videos for Ideate Apps, you'll notice that there's an overview video, but then there are additional videos for renumbering doors, renumbering rooms, how would you use X-ray, renumber in general, smart delete. So we've created these 5 or 10 minute videos allowing you to kind of quickly step through the functionality. So I'd encourage you to take a look and review at those, or all of our videos, when you go here to our support on any of our products, whether it's Sticky or Explorer, click on videos, and it will give you the video list that's available for that particular item. Okay. So if you're an existing Ideate software customer, I would recommend that you use our check for updates to make sure that you have the latest version installed. And the way that you would do that is, again, under any one of our applications, just select on Help, check for updates, and it will tell me my current installed version, right, in this case on August 27th, and then I can check the website for updates and then see that I have the latest and greatest. If you are not a current Ideate software customer, then you have the ability to go to our website and download a trial version of all of our solutions. So it's a 14-day trial, and it's a full working trial of all of our 4 solutions. The only caveat is for Ideate BIM Link, we restrict the number of rows you can export to 25. But if I come over here and go to, let's say, Help, or in one of these things, let's say Learn More, Online Help, this is again going out to my web page. Notice that any one of these, you can click on Free Trial, and then you can download a trial. You choose basically which software you're working with and which version of the product you want. Again, you see BIM Link, Explorer, Sticky, and Apps. It actually even says you are restricted right here to 25 rows, export in the trial. So with that concludes the formal part of the presentation today. I really want to thank CADSoft for hosting us, and I want to thank you for your attention and your time on the presentation. And I don't know if there are any questions.
No, we have no questions whatsoever, but if you have any questions after we get done, please reach out to Richard directly or to myself, and we'll get those answered for you. Please use the download trial. We at CADSoft will know whether or not you've decided to download, and we're available to help you out if needed. But I appreciate you listening in, and we did record this presentation, so I will follow up with a link of the recording if you would like to share it with others. And I want to thank Richard for his time today. So thank you very much.
Thank you.